Okay, it's 1:30, so the Hillsborough, what are we, TPO? What?
Can you set that screen
We're still addressing some technical issues, but why don't we go ahead and get started? Margaret Kublin's here, and I'll call the meeting in order for the TPO ITS committee. Okay, so hope everyone got a copy of the agenda and all the attachments, all that was delivered. Thank you, Cheryl, for getting that information out so we can prepare ourselves in advance of the meeting. Let's see, introductions. So I'm Margaret Kublins, City of Tampa, Chair of the ITS Committee for the TPO.
Brian Gentry, Hillsborough County Co-Chair.
Achilles Cortelis, Center for Urban Transportation Research at USF.
Pauline Castillo, Project Manager for the City of Plant City.
Judith Villegas, Hillsborough Expressway Authority.
Brian McCarthy, City Engineer for City of Temple Terrace.
And then anyone else on the committee online?
Dexter Corbin from HART, Director of IT.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, and welcome. Why don't we move to the roll call? And this does give us a quorum. Gail, can you do that?
Sure. You also have Megan from FDOT on the line, who's a non-voting member. Megan, can you pronounce your last name for me?
Sure, it's Megan Araste, and I'm the TISMO Program Engineer for Department of Transportation.
Thank you. So in the room, we have Margaret Kublins,
Here.
Brian Gentry,
Here.
Brian McCarthy,
Here.
Pauline Castillo,
Here.
Judith Villegas,
Here.
Jeff Sims, is he in yet?
Yes, here.
Thank you. Achilles,
Here.
is it pronounced Cortelis?
Yes.
Thank you. And then virtually, we have Dexter Corbin.
Yep, here.
And Megan. And you do have an in-person quorum. Chair, would you please call for a vote of remote participation?
I'd like to call a vote for consent of remote participation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? None being heard, so passed. Or did I need to make a motion or have someone make a motion for that?
It's fine as is.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have some public members here physically in the room, and then there may be some online. Are there any public comments that anyone would like to make? And I'd like to remind you, you have 3 minutes. None? None in the room? Anyone online? Gail, is anyone noting any comment, chat?
No hands up online.
Okay, well, with that, we'll move on to item 4, review and approval of the minutes. So did everyone have an opportunity to review the minutes from April 14th, 2022? Yes, I see heads being shaken. So any comments? None? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Brian Gentry makes a motion to approve the minutes from April 14th, 2022. A second? Second. Achilles provides our second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None being heard, the motion passes. That was the only voting that we needed to do today. So we'll move to the status reports. Thank you for putting the agenda together. It should be very interesting to hear technology and things that are available in the region. So, Vishaka, go ahead.
I would like to introduce Allison Ye. Can you please take over for the Friday Supply Chain Resiliency Study presentation?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Allison Ye. I'm the Assistant Director of Work Program Development and Sustainability for the TPO and project manager for this study. So the TPO, we've looked at freight and freight logistics for some time now in the past, but this particular study I wanted to note is our initial foray into freight supply chain resilience. And this topic has been, trending a lot, especially in the media, because it's affecting everyone's daily lives. And I'm very excited to have here today my project manager, Lauren Brooks, and also Jason Smeek, Associate VP for Global Supply Chain and Logistics at AECOM, who's quite an expert in this field, working on the study for us. So what we're going to do is step through the methodology and initial findings, and we're really hoping to get some feedback with your expertise as we finalize this report next month. So thank you for your time in advance. So take it away, Jason.
Perfect. Can everybody see my screen okay, or you see a camera in front of it? How does it look?
We see the screen, we can see the full slide.
Okay, perfect. So what I wanted to do today is introduce the Freight Supply Chain Resilience Study and provide a status update for you all. This study we've been working on for a few months now and are nearing the wrap-up phase of the project, and have a lot of interesting things to talk about today related to how that's structured and also what we're planning to do going forward. As mentioned, my name is Jason Smeek. I'm AVP of Global Supply Chain and Logistics with AECOM, and I lead all of our supply chain advisory efforts at the company. I really enjoy working on supply chain resiliency efforts specifically. It's a great opportunity not only to look at transportation networks and the companies and stakeholders, public and private, that utilize it, but also to figure out ways to better the communities that we live in. So I'll go ahead and start talking about our purpose. Go ahead. Any other comments? Okay. So the purpose of the project is really to identify the key supply chains in Hillsborough County and how they can be impacted or disrupted under certain disaster scenarios. As was mentioned by Allison, this is really the first foray into looking at the supply chain and the freight network specifically, and how that performs and what kind of recommendations come out of certain disaster or disruption scenarios. So we'll talk about those today, what we are considering within the study, what that scope looks like, as well as some of the activities. The study itself, some of the main focus areas of the study includes mapping the supply chains. And what we did is we utilized data from the BTS and FAF data, as well as spend data and some additional information to put together supply chains that are specific to 5 commodities and services that were selected and vetted by the team and participants in a number of larger group format meetings. We have identified the potential supply chain vulnerabilities. Some of those exist due to hazards that are natural, but also those that might be more likely from human-caused disruptions or disasters, such as cybersecurity issues and transportation incidents. Out of this, we'll recommend some actions that can mitigate the impacts of these disasters or disruptions and strengthen the supply chain resilience within Hillsborough County and the Tampa Bay region. And then establish ongoing engagement. One of the really important pieces of this is that we provide TPO and Hillsborough County and its stakeholders a way of starting to talk further about this topic and continue the engagement long beyond this this engagement, specifically this study, so that that preparedness, the contacts and the visibility, all the other elements of what makes a resilient supply chain can be improved and continue beyond the scope of this study and the time frame of the study. So we started in the February-March timeframe, and really that was centered around identifying and scoping the commodities and services for the disaster scenarios that we were going to be studying. What we did there was we took a very broad look at all the different hazard mitigation planning that has occurred, case studies, what is top of mind from a supply chain practice perspective, and put that all together in a listing and really looked at what was probably most feasible as well as most impactful to Hillsborough and its constituents and stakeholders. That then was taken forth to a number of stakeholder small group interviews in the task 2 timeframe, which was March through July. And those stakeholder interviews not only introduced the services and also disaster and scenarios that we had selected, but vetted those and then discussed related to those what type of initial feedback we could get from those small groups. We're about in that July to August timeframe where we're transitioning from the task 2 to task 3. We've done a number of stakeholder one-on-one interviews over the last month or so that has incorporated those that are in hazard management and disaster response, Florida Highway Patrol, a number of logistics-oriented players, and we're looking to connect with a number of private industries as well, specifically within the construction material space, bottled water, water distribution space, et cetera. So those we intend to anticipate to get a broad view of not only public but private stakeholder feedback. Task 3 is really going to be the next month as we start to wrap up the recommendations that have been gleaned from the stakeholder small group and one-on-one interviews, as well as our assessments specifically of the supply chains that we've mapped and the data and case study information that we've collected, and I'll take you through that in a moment. But we anticipate that by the end of August, the project will wrap with its recommendations and be able to share that in a larger stakeholder group meeting to really cover the results of our project. So the top 5 commodities that were selected, really we looked at the FEMA guidelines and the community lifelines guidance that exists out in from the federal perspective to help us identify, of those lifelines, like what are the ones that we think from an initial view perspective would be useful for Hillsborough to look at. That included food and grocery, water and wastewater utility, housing material, kind of the medical pharma side of healthcare, and then fuel distribution. And why we picked these 5 and vetted and confirmed these 5 was because of not only their elemental nature and criticality from a community lifelines perspective, but also the impact they have on the ability for supply chains to perform in a normal manner or lack thereof when a disaster or disruption is occurring. And so these 5 were picked and vetted, as I mentioned, to study in the process of this project. We also selected disaster scenarios, and these disaster scenarios really were centered around thinking about what would have an impact on the transportation network, what do we look at from a specificity to the supply chains that we were mapping, and how relevant they were for analysis. And we went through a list of, I think, about 30 or so at the beginning of the project, and identified 3 that were single disaster scenarios. And we also wanted to look at what potentially could occur if there were compound scenarios. For example, having a transportation event that occurs with cyber as one example, or another combination. So what we have here is flooding and wind events, which are very applicable, obviously, to Tampa and Hillsborough County. Looking at what tropical systems and specific, flooding events like we've had in Texas with Harvey and others. We want to look at these impacts and understand what they are to flooding and also to accessibility, utilities, et cetera. Same with wind events, so that's kind of bundled together here in this disaster disruption scenario. We also looked at human-caused disaster and disruptions such as cyber attack, which, as we all know, not only just because of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine with Russia, that there exists a risk for cyber attack, but certainly that has been a growing concern, especially within the distribution systems as we automate and try to provide more software control via SCADA and other means within the electrical distribution and water distribution systems. So as we computerize things, not only does that make it more efficient, but it can also increase the vulnerability of some of these networks. So we decided cyber attack was a very relevant one, and one that we've all been hearing about recently. And then the third major area of focus is the transportation event. That could be sabotage or a major roadway accident. Certainly those activities such as rail over a bridge that then collapses, or a major highway incident that has elements that take out infrastructure for a period of time, has a large impact on the mobility of freight, as well as the whether supply chains function normally. And think about rerouting and other aspects that occur, including workforce access. All of those aspects are critical to a properly performing and planned supply chain. An important part of this is not only the stakeholder engagement from a small group interview and one-on-one perspective, but also the community outreach portion of this as well. We conducted 6 group interviews ranging from utilities and communications all the way through emergency management and medical, freight interviews, et cetera, that then covered, as we said, this vetting of our thought process and our selections for the disasters, and also the specific commodities, but also gave us some insights into first thoughts that we could use for some of our work that followed. We've looked at disruptions and challenges that we heard around price inflation, access, reduced hours of businesses that are critical for community health and the ability for workforces to participate within the supply chain. We also looked at what was lacking in some of those, right? And specifically from our community sessions, a lot came out around, lack of workforce and that impact to, stores and whatnot in specific regions of Tampa and Hillsborough. Also specifics to how certain utilities are impacted by the lack of, let's say, sterilization chemicals for water treatment, potable water, and power, how important that is, not only from an ongoing powering perspective, but also from a backup generation perspective. And so these 2 elements, right, our stakeholder interviews and our community sessions, which we conducted 2 of, were very, very influential in how we started to frame our analysis and think about recommendations and catalog those recommendations for the use of the TPO and constituents. Not going to go into detail, but this is what a supply chain map looks like. This is a non-geospatial representation of a supply chain. This is the example of the food and grocery supply chain map that we've drafted for the study. It really takes the information that we see from a spend perspective through a number of data resources that then are utilized to identify, let's say, the modal split. So how much is transported via air, rail, water, or truck? How much of the purchases made within a specific segment of the supply chain are within or outside of the Tampa MSA? And then also in combination gives us a listing of critical supply chain vendors by spend that can be either engaged now or in the future to increase supply chain resiliency. These elements, when mapped, give you a flow chart similar to this. This again is non-geospatial, more of the process that we go through to kind of see from the inputs phase through to the actual consumption, and even in some cases beyond, to here as an example in the waste area, what happens with the waste. All of these pieces help to give us a picture of what the supply chain within the Tampa Bay region looks like, or the MSA looks like, and really intends to give a full picture, a comprehensive picture of what other elements exist, right? Information flow, financial flows. We have knowledge supply chain partners such as universities and trade schools, Chamber of Commerce as an example, Farm Bureau, right? There are a number of other stakeholders that these maps attempt to bring together so that you can see that in a fuller picture. Briefly, as I mentioned previously, we went through a methodology, and we'll continue this methodology through the conclusion of the project, taking these scenario events, utilizing frameworks that exist either within Hillsborough County or from the federal level, utilizing the Supply Chain Resilience Guide from FEMA, as well as the Community Lifelines toolkits, Also looking at literature and also case studies from supply chain management materials and thought leadership that exists, whether from the business community or from universities as an example, studies that help us frame this problem or the problems that occur during disasters and disruptions. We've also looked at the Project Phoenix model and the HAZUS models for the flooding and wind impacts that occur during tropical systems that come through the area, and see kind of what that would do to the transportation utility infrastructure that exists in Tampa. And then from that, combining that with the stakeholder and community input, we're able to then develop a series of observations, impacts, implications, and their severity, as well as, and most importantly, a number of actionable recommendations that Hillsborough and its constituents can work on together to advance overall resiliency within the supply chain. One-on-one stakeholders, I mentioned this previously, but here's a good representation of what we either have met with or are planning to meet with over the next couple of weeks to finalize the project. And really where we are today, as I mentioned, is starting to wrap these recommendations and insights up into our report and have a number of presentations around that over the coming 3 or so weeks. We're going to complete our one-on-one interviews with our key agency and private stakeholders, critically develop those preliminary actionable recommendations, whether they be transportation related, infrastructure, policy related. A lot of these can be outside, let's say, the transportation space, but have a direct impact on the performance of the supply chain and the utilization of infrastructure. So we're going to bring those in. And then we're going to be presenting our findings and our recommended actions at the Hillsborough County Local Mitigation Strategy Working Group meeting. That will be in August on the 10th. And the CAC and TAC committees and board meetings in August as well. And then from that activity, wrapping it all up, we'll be putting together a final deliverable and executive summary, as well as a list of sources and supporting technical memorandums on the process and the insights that have been gleaned throughout this study for the use of Hillsborough and stakeholders. And I did want to mention, obviously, Allison Ye is our project sponsor. So there's contact information here if you have further questions about the study or wish to provide any feedback. But I thank you for your time.
Jason, thank you very much. That was very informative. I mean, those are the kind of studies that we need in our region. I had a question within the model evaluation. So when Irma came through, fortunately, I actually had to be in Texas the next Tuesday to teach. So I left early when Irma was rolling through, so I didn't have to experience any of the evacuations. But I do remember here reporting like fuel. I was pleased to see that fuel was an issue on there and something you're evaluating. So it seems pretty complex that fuel's an issue, after an event, but, beginning it may be even more important because people are evacuating at the time. So how does that play in your study, or do you get into that level of detail?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, one of the areas we are looking at is fuel. And Tampa's unique in that, in some ways, in that it has a primarily imported fuel source, and it's at the terminus of in the beginning of a large pipeline system that feeds, frankly, the rest of Central Florida. And so we are looking at that. One of the elements of that is during the disaster and post-disaster recovery phase, but certainly insights into kind of the preparation and other pieces that we may come across during the study would then be provided as well as we see them.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Questions?
Question.
Vishaka?
Thank you, Jason, for the presentation. I have a question. You evaluate the impacts of communication disruptions, cell phones, and other forms of communication?
Yeah, so those disruptions or disasters that we've identified, they have specific impacts to infrastructure, right, as an example, and also other elements of the community, whether it be workforce, the availability thereof, or shelter, other pieces of this that may not be transportation or utility oriented. So these disasters and disruptions have been assessed on their impact to all of the above, whether it be communications or water or electricity or structures or highway system or port infrastructure as an example. And what we're trying to do is identify where within those elements that support the supply chain's proper functioning, where are those impacted from those disasters and disruptions. So certainly from a impact perspective, these all have elements of disruption to communications or make it less easy to have visibility within the supply chain or communicate within supply chain actors or stakeholders. And yes, that is a major piece of this, especially for cyber, which is frankly a root cause, right? And you're taking down SCADA infrastructure that support the proper functioning of the electrical grid as an example, or water, or even, you know, what that does if you have a cyber attack as an example to the proper functioning of business functions for utilities or for private businesses. It's absolutely critical. And then of course we see that in the wind and water events as well, where we have mass scale impacts to communications. And really for supply chains, you'll see a lot of the critical connectivity between supply chain actors really centers around communication. What is the supply? What is the demand? What are the financial flows, for example, within certain actors? What are the information flows that are needed to properly perform? What we see in many studies is that these elements, when lacking, lead to supply chain imbalances, and you may actually have the product present, but it's not clear on where it needs to go and how much quantity or in what time frame. So these are all critical points, and communications is absolutely one of them.
Thank you.
I do have one question. Hi, Jason, this is Pauline. Are you guys looking into like the diversity? It did look like, and just the map that you had, like 76% is in trucks and not a lot going to like air or water. Are you guys going to be looking into maybe diversifying that, or is that just gonna?
Yes.
Because I know it's easier to go through this.
So this is a multimodal assessment. So what we're looking at is, obviously we'll focus on where the majority of the modal capacity is utilized for a specific commodity or service, right? So that's very important. We'll try and focus on where the majority of it is, because a lot of the time when you're looking at the overall throughput of the supply chain, you're trying to figure out, okay, where is most of it moving, and how do we ensure that that bulk of it is still moving, so we usually have some kind of support or recovery that is occurring. So yes, we are looking at kind of from a multimodal perspective, and that includes pipeline, that includes the port infrastructure. We actually have a port discussion tomorrow. We've talked with the airport authority as an example. So we're taking into account all of the discussions, the interviews, the lessons learned from those modes, and then trying to target within each of the commodities and services, you know, where those have applicability, right? So in the case of fuel, as an example, a lot of it's pipeline, but when you get to the distribution point of the supply chain, when you're actually taking it to gas stations, convenience stores with gas stations, or other depots, right, you're actually transporting that via truck, right? So we're taking that into consideration of the fact that that's pipeline, and then we have truck transportation as well.
It sounds very powerful, having redundant systems in order to also for resiliency, communication. You know, in our world, we look at the loops regionally, the loops for fiber optics.
Yep.
Yeah, we can't always rely on cell as our communication. We need to have those the fiber optic system, and the redundancy really makes a difference for our resiliencies.
Yeah, and that's actually a great point too, right? A lot of the supply chain relies on fiber and broadband to conduct its business, not really cell phone. And so you're almost getting into a situation where you do not have that infrastructure and it's down. You're really not, you're immediately hampered, right? Because the amount of data, the amount of kind of IT infrastructure and systems that are built on a backbone of fiber is so great within supply chains.
Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
I was just curious to know if McDill was involved with your stakeholders as being kind of a separate federal government agency that could provide that type of redundancy if the airport ever goes down, or if we needed any type of logistical issue or extra redundancy equipment. I don't know where I'm going with that one, but.
Yeah. So we have discussed that. Obviously the fact that we have a very large stakeholder in McDill being present in Tampa, and also the utilization potentially, and we vetted this and discussed this with the airport authority of how those two stakeholders interact together. If, let's say, Tampa's down, is McDill an option? And a lot of these have to do with how strong the security is around McDill and utilizing that as a point of potential recovery. Is probably unlikely unless the severity of the impact goes up to the executive level, as in Florida itself can't handle the situation because of its severity or the resources required, and then that would actually go up to the president, and that would be where the point would be where we could start utilizing, let's say, potentially military facilities for that. But to answer your question directly, we haven't spoken with the military and the Air Force Base.
Jason, if I could chime in. Hi, everyone. This is Lauren Brooks, project manager. So actually, AECOM is performing the resilience study for McDill. So we've actually been in close communication with the other team doing that study. So we've had some interaction with them. Just wanted to add that.
Correct.
Thank you, Lauren. Anyone else? Any comments online? Questions? Great. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Lauren.
Absolutely, happy to. Thank you.
Thank you all.
And Allison as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just let Vishaka know if you have any more questions. We're happy to entertain more offline.
Sure. Send me an email and we'll communicate with them and get back to you. Thank you. It was a great presentation. I think we have this one.
You want to do?
Good.
Oh.
So I think I have all three speakers there.
Okay, so Alice Price. Alice is going to introduce, or she's going to present to us the FDOT District 7 Smart Corridors Plan. Or maybe,
Vishaka.
This is Alice. Hey, Alice.
Hi.
You need control of the screen?
Gotcha. Okay. Did that work?
Now we can see it.
Yes,
Awesome.
well, it's not in presentation. There you go. Yep, we're there.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So you can hear me well and you can see the screen.
Yes. Both.
Both.
I do not want you to see my face. So you probably can though in the room there, I think. All right. Are we ready to go? Well, thank you very much to the Hillsborough TPO and Chair Margaret for allowing us to share some updates for you. My name is Alice Price. I am representing FDOT today, and I actually work for Atkins. I think many of you know that I've worked with the department now for over 15 years on various planning, environment, design, and even construction projects. So appreciate the opportunity to share on behalf of Justin Hall and Liz Winters in our planning and environmental management group. Many of you may know that Ken Spitz was formerly in that planning role, and now Liz Winters has moved over from project management and joined us in planning. So we're excited to have some new energy over in our area, and she'll be representing us on a lot of different smart cities types of projects. So speaking of smart cities, we've been meeting frequently here lately, and this past year we kind of refreshed some of our initiatives to create a roadmap on where we want to go in the future. And I'm involved in smart cities. You're a regional partner. We'd love to have you join, and just reach out to me through the TPO, and we can get you connected to that initiative, because we're really trying to push the needle. And sometimes it feels like we try really hard and we don't go very far, but we do have a lot of different wonderful efforts that you hear about, of course, on this committee. Smart Corridors is one of 5 initiatives that we are going to be focused on for the next 2 to 3 years. Some of those other initiatives are the continuation of the Mobility as a Service initiative, smart parking throughout the region, alternative fuel corridors, and that planning perspective of that, and then how we can coordinate some of our click and fix programs that a lot of our municipalities have that DOT would like to also participate in to give our public easier access to provide feedback on our system as they go through their days. So getting into the smart cities, to the Smart Corridors project, we have 2 phases that we've gone through, and one is complete and the next phase is nearly underway. So we wanted to let you know where we are and where we're going. So a smart corridor is a general term that we use to describe a stretch of roadway where technology connects with the community in real time to dynamically manage travel using some of the elements that you see in these call-out boxes on this graphic. These corridors will help people and goods to move efficiently and safely and reliably throughout Florida and beyond, no matter what mode is being used. If you've lived in this region for very long, or even if you haven't, you know that we're a growing region. And one thing that we all know is that we have to think differently about our network. Our community demands that. So beyond just capacity projects, the department is looking at these types of initiatives to see how we can address some of the key issues that you see here. We have heavy congestion across our freeways, a high number of pedestrian and bicycle injuries and fatalities. We have a need to increase our multimodal options and improve transit, and the need to be able to adopt some of these emerging technologies that can unlock capacity without adding lanes. So we began the Smart Corridor Phase 1 back in the winter of 2020, right at the tail end of COVID. And we finished that first phase in fall, and you're going to see a video in a moment that just kind of summarizes the different technologies that we're looking at. What we wanted to provide to the department was a clear description of what a smart corridor is. We wanted to provide a series of toolkits to be able to support different types of facilities, freeways, and arterials. We wanted to create a specific brand, which is that Smart Link brand that I had on the first slide, and a flexible approach that allows us to not only leverage what's out there today, but future-proof as new technologies and other solutions come out, like autonomous and connected vehicles as they progress. So I have a little video. I hope it shows. If you'll just speak up, Vishaka, if it doesn't play. This is about 4 minutes long, and I won't spend a whole lot more time after the video is done.
In the spirit of invention and a desire to transform travel, all modes of travel, welcome to SmartLink, an interactive, intermodal, innovative travel experience right here in the Tampa St. Pete region. Whether we get there on our own 2 feet, 2 wheels, 4 wheels, 5 wheels, or 4 wheels, we want to do it safely, conveniently, and reliably. And we'll turn to technology, data, and a bit of humanity to help us do it. What you'll be able to hear is clearly solid technology.
Did you say you couldn't hear?
Right. Well, we can hear it, but it's not coming through clearly. Wait, I've got some recommendations for everyone.
Do you want to play from here? Maybe?
Yeah.
Sure, we can try it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I just think that what we're hearing is her speakers coming through her microphone, so the audio is.
So maybe she turns off her speaker.
Oh, maybe turn off your speakers.
Or mic, yeah.
Turn off your mic.
Mine?
Yeah, Alice, if you turn off your mic, maybe it'll play through your system.
No, we can't hear now.
So it hasn't started yet.
Yeah, there's. Yeah, it plays there.
I can try to play it at our end.
Let's see.
You're self-mute. Alice, you're self-muted. Can you unmute yourself, please?
I think she has to turn off her speakers. Or what we can do is.
Okay, that didn't work.
I can run the slideshow over here.
Can you?
Yeah, I can, yeah.
Alice?
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah.
We're going to try to, oh, she's gone completely.
Hey, Alice, you're muted.
She signed
We can't hear you. Okay.
Thank you. Somebody, and I couldn't get back. I'll send you out the link to the video and we'll learn from, I always have trouble with Teams, so I was hoping GoTo would be a little easier to show, but that's okay. We'll just continue on.
But Shaka's actually going to try to play it from here.
Oh, good, yes. I'll send her the link just in case, so that'd be great. You want me to?
Yeah, I can try that. Just give me a second.
Yeah, she's going to try. Hold on.
Let's see if this works.
In the spirit of invention and a desire to transform travel, all modes of travel, welcome to SmartLink, an interactive, intermodal, innovative travel experience right here in the Tampa-St. Pete region. Whether we get there on our own 2 feet, 2 wheels, 4 wheels, 5th wheels, or no wheels, we want to do it safely, conveniently, and reliably, and we'll turn to technology, data, and a bit of humanity to help us do it. The journey starts here. Let's take a look at some of that technology. Regulating the flow of vehicles as they merge onto the freeway.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
In the spirit of invention and a desire to transform travel, all modes of travel, welcome to SmartLink, an interactive, intermodal, innovative travel experience right here in the Tampa-St. Pete region. Whether we get there on our own 2 feet, 2 wheels, 4 wheels, 5th wheels, or no wheels, we want to do it safely, conveniently, and reliably, and we'll turn to technology, data, and a bit of humanity to help us do it. The journey starts here. Let's take a look at some of that technology. Regulating the flow of vehicles as they merge onto the freeway reduces interference with existing highway traffic. Ramp meters automatically turn on only when high volumes and congestion are detected. Lane control arrows and variable speed limit signs work together to improve traffic flow based on current conditions. Speeds are updated while specific lanes can be closed when blocked, alerting drivers of upcoming queues, slowdowns, or incidents. Connected vehicle technology, closed-circuit TV cameras, Bluetooth and microwave detection systems collect data and live traffic conditions that assess current conditions, helping travelers easily get where they're going. Message boards help keep drivers informed of roadway conditions and can let travelers know in advance that traffic is stopped or slowed ahead. Messages can be updated automatically to display traffic conditions, travel times, construction and road incidents, and can also be used for weather, amber and silver alerts, and safety messages. During periods of congestion, special events, or evacuation, the shoulder lane can be opened and used as a travel lane without the high cost of road widening. Emergency refuge areas provide a safe place for vehicles and road rangers to pull over in the event of a crash or vehicle failure when the shoulder lane is in use. Technology doesn't end once you hit the streets. Users interact with connected vehicle technology, either through a built-in unit in their car or smartphone apps that will send and receive traffic data, allowing users to be notified ahead of changing conditions. Live traffic data is used to time intersection traffic signals instantly, moving vehicles as efficiently as possible through traffic signals, especially during special events. ADA-compliant shelters feature displays with high-contrast HD resolution that instantly streams live travel updates and wayfinding maps, allowing for easy access to live mapping, city directions, information, and services. They also feature wheelchair accessibility and leading rails. Technology senses the presence of people who are waiting to cross the street and automatically activates the walk signal without any action required from the pedestrian. Automatic detection is more accurate and efficient than the push button, reducing wait times and increasing safety, as pedestrians are less likely to cross the intersection during a don't walk phase. Computer analytics review video of vehicles and pedestrians moving through intersections to identify where dangerous conditions and near-miss accidents are regularly occurring. This helps identify where safety improvements should be made. Varying light intensity in correlation with traffic, weather, and lighting conditions is a real energy saver. Conditions are detected through sensors or video cameras. When vehicles, pedestrians, or adverse weather conditions are detected, light levels increase. We're committed to providing a safe, multimodal travel experience to the area, one that ensures mobility for all people, including those needing additional assistance, one that enhances economic prosperity, preserves the quality of our environment and communities, improves traffic flow so travelers have a less stressful and maybe even more enjoyable experience. We're embarking on providing a better travel experience for citizens and visitors in the Tampa Bay region in a forward-thinking way, a technological way, a safer way, a better way. Because at the end of the day, you just want to get there, safe and sound. And so do we.
Okay, thank you for sharing that, Vishaka. And if you want to, do you want to maintain control there? Oh, and just advance the slides from there?
I can do that too.
Awesome. So we'll just go on to the next slide. So what you saw in the video is basically the foundation of our toolkits, right? So we've vetted with DOT and with government partners. Many of you that are sitting in the room, I'm sure, were a part of those conversations. And the idea is that we have these this toolkit that we can then apply to our freeways and our arterials. So you see here is just it's a very busy. I actually have it's a better as a handout. You can see the work around the freeway concept. It can be applied to interstates. There's a lot of behind the scenes efforts to improve the user experience along the interstate. Active traffic management is the key with the potential for variable speed limits. We could use lane control signage. The ramp signaling and metering is a big portion of it. And as we collect more data with our system, our TMCs will then have the greater ability to monitor and learn the system and make real-time adjustments and hopefully even predict conditions before they occur. You can go to the next slide. And likewise, on our arterials, we're looking at things such as adaptive signals, variable speed limits, and travel time dissemination. But also some of the added benefits on the arterials and also on the interstates too is we're talking about transit signal priority and smart bus stations and hard shoulder running on the interstate. Passive, and you heard him say passive and bicycle and cyclist detection as well, which plays into our Target Zero and the local Vision Zero efforts. You can go to the next slide. As a separate effort, we also did look at ramp metering, and we started out, we were just going to look in the urban core, and then Richard Moss wanted us to look throughout the region. So we pretty much did a readiness assessment for 63 interchanges throughout District 7, and we're looking at the geometry and potential for fitting equipment in and what we have. And then we also coordinated with the TB Next program and kind of looked at what the future might look like on some of those interchanges in the urban core. We did some stakeholder engagement and some preliminary cost estimates, and then a prioritized phase deployment plan for how we could roll out ramp metering. And I think we've been talking about this as a region for many years, and we know community engagement is going to be a huge part of that. We'd be looking to you guys as champions to help us, vocalize it, communicate it, and get the region ready for what's next. So let's go on to the next slide. So just real quick, these are just some of the benefits that you can see, some of the ones that we talk about all the time, the problems that we're trying to solve, but some of those ancillary benefits are the real-time information and some of the sustainability benefits that DOT doesn't always focus on, but through being able to manage the traffic more efficiently, we can also tap into some of those benefits. You can go to the next slide. So with the smart corridors, we have a phase 2 that's ready to begin. We're awaiting our notice to proceed from DOT's procurement office. So it should start in the next couple of months. And we hope to finish it up by the following fall. And our scope, we've been working with the Smart Cities leadership team to determine what segments we should start to apply these toolkits on. And the two that have come up thus far are US 301 in Hillsborough County. And then we just talked about in our leadership meeting just a few hours ago, so hot off the press, but the potential to look at US 19 through Pinellas and Pasco County. So just looking at how we can apply and customize some of these toolkits to those two corridors, which we all know have a lot of opportunity for improvement by using technology. So there'll be some heavy coordination with the counties and any municipalities that are involved with DOT throughout the process. And that is all I have today. I have my safety slide there, so just a plug for Target Zero and Vision Zero, because we want everyone to make it home safely. Any questions?
I do. Of course. Vishaka, could you go back to the corridor, the arterial example?
Sure, I'm trying to see how I can put this clean
And what I'd like I guess because of the engagement, I mean, Hillsborough County and the city of Tampa, you know, we participate in a lot of these conversations in the Smart Cities Alliance in many different ways. But I was curious to know from like the city of Flint City as well as Temple Terrace, like of these concepts, what do you have a focus area on the technology side that you guys are putting time in on, or you want to participate in any of these studies or anything like that?
And Fred will be able to answer this better, so you can reach out to him. But I know I've heard him talk about just being able to take in more data. I know he'd like that, like the smart monitoring. We really want to look more into that. So I'll ask him. I know for sure that's something he's interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because at the smaller agency areas, you know, they have some unique opportunities because you have smaller areas, which you might have more complex conditions. So you'd be able to take in the pedestrian, the cyclists, the cars, as well as transit that's running through your town, and freight. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how they all fit. And I'm thinking more of your local streets and roads, not so much the DOT roads. So, Brian, did you have something?
Kind of just to piggyback off of Plant City, that yeah, the monitoring we are thing like heads and bicyclists.
Right.
We have no way of counting those without having to hire consultants to do something like that. And I know our city council is very interested in making our city safer for everyone.
Right, right.
Was that Temple Terrace that was speaking?
Yes, Brian.
Awesome. Just trying to make sure.
Right.
I know a lot of our traffic signals are all maintained by the county, so we would kind of lean on the county for assistance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's opportunity to maybe cut some video because all the pedestrian bicycle counts, those are being generated from video, and so you might have an opportunity to get during maintenance. They can, you know, put something on hold and do maybe a study along the corridor. Do you have on-street parking as well on any of your streets?
Yes, but more in downtown than anything else.
Right.
Yeah, same with us. Downtown.
But you do have on-street parking that you manage?
Yes.
And curb management, because that's another thing that's part of the discussion at the Smart Cities Alliance. Just so happened, hot off the press, we had this meeting earlier today, so. Yeah, so Alice, there you go.
Awesome. No, that's great. I think it's a lot like transit, right? We have to do it one piece at a time. So, you know, while we're identifying 1 to 2 corridors to like really see if we can measure the benefits out of, that's just the beginning, right? So as there new projects roll out, we're always looking for new areas to study, and maybe it is on a smaller scale, like the bicycle and pedestrian interaction and some of the local roads with some of the state roads.
you might be able to get some things done that we have more bureaucracy, so we not have, we're not quite as nimble as you may be. Maybe, I don't know. Any other questions?
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
There is a question in the chat. It's from Dr. Wong. Johnny, you are able to unmute yourself if you'd like to ask it, or I can read it for you.
I'll unmute myself. Hey, Alice. I was just wondering what options District 7 is exploring for speed control on interstates. We got a question from a member of the public a couple of weeks back, and we know of a lot of the tools in the toolbox for speed control on arterials, but we were racking our brain for interstates and wanted to know if you had any suggestions.
Yeah, part of it's the variable speed limit conversation, and I know that can be controversial because of the enforcement issue. So we would have a lot of coordination and work to do to see if it were something that were applicable, but it is in the toolbox. So if you go back one slide, Vishaka, where you can see the freeway concept, you can see those overhead gantries. They're kind of small here, but there's an overhead gantry there with not only lane control, but with the opportunity for speed control as well. And there are some precedents around the nation for us to kind of study and look at to see how well it's working and if it would work here. So that's one of the components there is the individual variable speed limit and by lane also.
And Alice, if I may add, this is Megan, we are going to have a pilot project that for putting the signs for variable speed on I-75. So that's something that we have been studying through the information from RTMC as far as the speeding locations. Usually when you go from an urban area to a rural area, you usually see that increase in speed. We also share that information with FHP. So that's something that's in the works. From a traffic ops perspective, we have bought the devices and we're thinking of the implementation locations.
Cool, thank you both. I'd be really interested to learn more about that pilot as it develops.
That's great.
Megan,
we could share that with you when we implement it, which I'm hoping would be in this fiscal year, and we can share some of the results.
Megan, this is Margaret. Is there anything being considered for under work zone data exchange and or smart work zones for speed, posting the speeds of each individual lane as you go through a work zone? Do you know if they've if that's been considered?
Well, we have two smart work zone projects right now. One is the downtown interchange, the main flyover. That has a component. I don't know all the, well, actually there are devices that show the work zone speed. And I can get you more detail. That was on the downtown interchange, and we're also having it another project on for the smart work zone on an arterial on 41 that's going to be implemented with a project this year. But as far as the specific devices, I can get back to you.
Okay, well, as those get move forward and develop a little bit more, we'll be inviting you back to present on that information. So thank you very much.
And Margaret, you know that the regional data platform will have that work zone data exchange capability. So that's part of what Urban SDK is helping us build out. So more to come on that piece as well.
Yeah, I think One Network has one. Yeah, so One Network, who's presenting next, I think they have a component of that as well. So.
Awesome.
Okay, any more comments specifically on the smart corridors?
I do have one, I guess, question / comment. So one of the things I want just feedback on, if you guys are like have some sort of criteria on when to put this, because I mean, you guys drive on the highways just as much as I do, so no one really follows the speed limits. And the last thing I want is for these signs to teach people to brake the green arrow, red cross, because right now people go past the speed limit, and if there's no consequences, then they're going to continue to do so, right? So it's almost like that human mentality. If the electric fence says don't touch, you'll get electrocuted, and you touch it and you don't get electrocuted, someone sees that, they go, okay, I can touch it too. And then you have like all of a sudden like mass people breaking the law, right? So if you have like a giant X and like you're trying to be extra safe and like closing down a lane really early, for example, but if someone's going on the X and they're like, nothing happened to me, I'm on the X, and they keep going, then everyone's gonna go on the X because they're like, there's no real consequence to going to the X until you're like 2 miles out when the lane is like actually closed. And then you're gonna start teaching people to like not follow X's is what so I'm wondering, is there like that human capacity of like, yeah, it's smart to close down the lane a mile or 2 out, but then it teaches people to not follow signs.
So I'll go ahead and speak to that because I used to be at DOT and help develop Safe Trip. So in Safe Trip, what we had done is we were looking to deploy what's called the zipper merge. And if you can just Google zipper merge and see how it works, but basically you don't close the lane. You encourage drivers to push up to where you're, to use all the lanes, all the capacity, and you push up to where the merge is. And then if you get people to literally do like a zipper, it's like you alternate, like, yeah, that's the proper way to drive and that's the proper way to merge in those kind of conditions. And so it would take a lot of education, but that certainly is the recommendation for managing work zones because it makes it safer and it's much more efficient to get people to just close all those gaps and you fill the gaps. And so, yeah, your saturation flow rate ends up being like 40% higher if you get people to just push all up.
Right. But if because those are physical barriers versus just like an X, that's what I'm looking at here. Like there's just gonna be an X. So there's no like physical barrier like forcing people to slowly zipper in. It's just kind of like an X going, this lane is not closed.
Right. That's a good point.
I agree with Margaret's philosophy on education. That's kind of what I alluded to, that there's a lot that would have to be done before people were ready for that technology. I think that they learn that we're trying to put things in the place to make the system more efficient and safe. It's just got to be, not just DOT preaching it, but all of our partners preaching how important it is. And then the enforcement side as well. There's going to be an education component there. So
Maybe just looking into a different symbol, because again, an X is very much like don't. And if there's not an immediate consequence, yeah, like a flash, a yellow, something saying this will close versus just don't come in, because then, yeah.
Good point. Thank you. Okay. Are you ready to go to the next one? Because I think we have two presentations. Okay. So the next is One Network is going to present for traffic management platform. Brian Gentry and Barry Matlack.
Yeah, so Hillsborough County is pursuing an initiative to pilot One Network, which is a cloud-based platform for work zone data. And it centralizes the data for multiple agencies to help coordinate and communicate. And we'd also like to share the work zone data exchange feed with others. And then there's other modules available as well to do some more advanced type concepts. But I'll let Barry take it away and present.
Can I bring up the screen? Is Barry there online?
I am here. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
I think I can.
Okay.
All from there.
Great.
Just a second, Mary.
Wait, she's going to switch the control to you.
Okay.
Joe, can you share your screen?
I can, but it's asking me. Hold on, I haven't used this GoToWebinar, and it's asking me to allow or go to meeting. Oh boy. It's going to make me restart the GoToMeeting, it should only take a second. If I get kicked out of the meeting, I'll rejoin quickly. I didn't realize that there was a setting change that needed to share my screen.
Do you have to reset this too?
I don't know.
Because we seem to be frozen.
I know, I think that screen is frozen, but I can change the presenter from here. Or if you have a presentation that you want me to share, do you want to send it over to me or?
Yeah, I'm gonna show the platform itself, so that would be difficult. If I just quit and rejoin, I think I'll be fine.
Okay.
Give it a
All
shot.
right, let me try. Quit.
Let me try to get hold of it.
Sure. Alternatively, we could like switch to Megan first and do I4 Frank first. That's what Brian suggested.
Yeah, sure. We can do that.
Can you switch her?
Yeah, we can do the presenter.
Vishaka, would you be able to run it from your side?
I can do that then.
Yeah, could you please do that?
But that screen is frozen.
Did you tell him?
Yes, he said it's back in.
No, he is. He's already back in.
It's back in.
Yeah.
So do you, I think I've already.
I'm back. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I didn't realize that that would be the case. I only have about 10 different conference webinar things. I must have missed that one.
Okay,
Is Barry the
so
presenter now? Do you have the presentation rights?
Yeah.
Barry?
Yes, I do. And I should be able to share it right now. Tell me when you can see it.
Yes, now we can see it.
we can
Okay.
see it.
All right, thanks for your patience. Brian, thanks for the intro. So today my goal here was to actually talk a bit about One Network's platform and then really jump into what we're doing in Tampa and in Florida and the data acquisition that we have and how we're rolling out some things, including a project with FDOT. Some of the FDOT people, Margaret, Brian, others in the room, I recognize names that we've actually had discussion with. So again, just a quick brief on One Network and the platform, then I'm going to jump into the platform and actually show it. One Network is about a 10-year-old company. It's a very robust platform. We've been in the UK, doing business in the UK for about 10 years, and about a year and a half came to the US. We really focus, like Brian said, 100% on roadway interruptions. A lot of that obviously is work zone, but events, work zone, incidents, all types of interruptions. We manage about 98% of all the agencies' workflows in that capacity. In the UK, we track about 3 million planned disruptions a year and have hundreds of thousands of lane closures with 67,000 users just in the UK. About the US, so we started projects and pilots and so on over about the last year. We've integrated data from over 40 plus states along with more than 30 some cities, including some toll agencies. And again, I'll talk specifically a bit more about Florida today. We also have some partnerships with the GPS providers and others that are coming on board that allow us to do some pretty unique things. And I will cover that, those relationships and how they work on the platform. And then of course, I'm going to talk about the FDOT project a little bit. So as a platform, really what we do is we bring in data and centralize it. I think, the power of a regional platform, everyone has kind of experienced that at some level. But as we all know, the data tends to be siloed, right? So incident data versus permit data versus some usable GIS data could all be in these different systems. We centralize that and standardize that data. The look and feel and how that data is interacted with is standardized on our platform on the map. And then we take that and utilize the platform modules, if you will. I'll talk about those individually in a little bit more depth, including a handheld, an app for handheld devices that allow to open and close roads in real time and move that data around. So where does that data go? What do we do with it? What's the goal to make this happen, to standardize and enrich that data, is to get it out to other systems, particularly for public consumption, we feel like and the numbers say that these and others are really where people go for their data when they're driving and planning their trips. I know I do. I think everyone in the room, if I asked if you've used the 511 for that, or if you would go to Waze, or everyone is now using that. So we push that data out. Brian mentioned a little bit about WZDX. We 4 customers, and you may have seen a press release recently we did for the state of North Carolina. We're also doing that, or have done that already. Is about to be published to the FHWA's repository for consumption, the FDOT data. We will be doing that with the Hillsborough data and others. So that WZDX becomes an important component. When we standardize that data, it allows developers and data sharing to be much easier, much less expensive. And again, standardization means that we can do some pretty neat things with it when it comes to sharing it to other systems and back through these API, either bespoke APIs in general or WZDX back to these systems with the ATMS, ATIS, permitting, and so on. So we can actually enrich that data with the enriched data that we've already collected. So the platform itself consists of about 5 modules. We have other modules that are on their way over. We have about a dozen of them between modules and plugins that are utilized, including for transit in the UK. And we will continue to bring those over from customer need. We have a public map. The public map is just exactly what it sounds like. It's a map that a person could go in and subscribe to, look at. It's free of charge. The data is there for consumption. They can create routes and geofenced areas where they can say, if anything comes up in this area, please alert me through email alerts. And again, that's free to the public. We've become somewhat of a de facto 511 system or traveler information system in the UK, just simply because we have all the data from all of those agencies there. And again, we don't charge for that. It's just public service that is consumed on a daily basis by many, many users. Content management allows you to automate the enhancement of that data. As data comes in from your systems, we're able to show a multitude of different types of data based on what's being imported. Our parsers grab that data, and through business rules that you've created or that we've helped you to create, then that data would be automatically generated. And I'll show you a little bit of an example of that. Traffic management module is the base of the platform. It's really where we enhance that data. I'm going to show it to you not in its entirety, but give you a feel for what that does. And it allows you to add and manage the right away interruptions. It also allows you to enhance data that's already there, that's coming in from an ATMS and in from an ATIS, in from a GIS system. Very powerful tools. PlanShare, it's a process-driven interface that allows you to either internally or externally allow people to submit plans in the One Network platform and then approve those plans, and then eventually the agency would be able to publish those plans just by a click of a button. So it's really more for contractors or internal use for approval processes. And then we have LiveLink. LiveLink is what I'll talk about with FDOT, the FDOT project, but ultimately transmitting live road closure data out to our GPS partners and allowing them to create real-time alerts and information that goes straight to the platform. It can be worker presence, it can be temporary speed limits, it can be just work zone is active. So there's a few different options there. But at the end of the day, we're after work zone safety. We're after reducing congestion and really getting the word out to the consumer in the format and in the applications that they're using today. The future of that also, I mean, I've heard, talking about CAV today quite a bit. Those vehicles and those concepts are going to need this type of lane closure data and this type of information to operate efficiently and safely. So a little bit about what the FDOT project is, and some of you FDOT folks have probably been engaged with this already. We have a roadside mobile app, and essentially the roadside, work zone supervisors will be able to open and close lanes in real time. A lot of times when we take data in from a construction database or a permitted database and so on, it's point data or it may have some GIS data attached to it, but it's just that. It's when is it permitted for? When are they allowed to be in the roadway? That's typically what's there. And so what we're doing here is we're saying, no, that's not just planned. This is actually what's happening today. So through the roadside mobile app and smart work zone devices that I'm guessing most of you are familiar with, companies like iCones and the smart arrow boards and so on, be able to actually, with authoritative assurance, bring that data into the One Network platform and then push it out to these systems, and eventually in real time, getting the goal to get it out to the drivers in fairly real time, very, very quickly, which allows them to make those decisions. So that's the core of what the project is. We can talk a bit more about it in the Q&A if you have some questions. Here's an example of something that it would look like. So this is in our system here. This would be something that someone has pushed the button. You can see the little halo here, means that something actually is happening there. And then this is what would end up, and this is a Google map, and this is what ends up in there: road closure on Station Road closed until 5:30 p.m. There are also alerts and alarms and so on. It really depends on the platform that you're using, of how they use the data, but it is, again, functionally a real-time system that allows that to happen. So that's it for the slide piece of it. I want to take it to the platform itself at this point. So if any of you have questions after the fact, I'm running through this fairly quickly, or you want to explore the platform further or what we're doing in Florida or in Tampa specifically, we're happy to go ahead and set up some time for you outside of that. So let me just go here. And so just an overview of the platform itself. If you look at the public map, it looks very much just like this. So the public or the users are able to go in and turn off and on layers as they would in a typical traveler information system. There's a lot of different things here. I could go through them all, but at the end of the day, they're able to really narrow down to what they're looking for. If the agency has things like traffic cameras, we can turn those on. We have the DMS type signs, operational info that is based on what are the county boundaries, what are the district boundaries, the city boundaries, and so on, just for display. And then you can display those in a roadway, in a satellite view, in a terrain map, and also in OpenStreetMaps. So that's kind of a how do you view it piece. The other thing is you want to see what's happening today, in 2 weeks, 3 months, 12 months, last 2 weeks. You can also use a time slider and go forward and back in time so that only the dates that you're looking for are available. Very helpful when planning things. So I know in talking to permitting folks in the Tampa region, one of the things is they can go in really quickly and look at not just what their data says, are we planning something on our roadway? Let's say Tampa is planning something and Hillsborough is looking to plan something, they can go in and see what each other are doing and interact with that data very quickly and easily. And then if they need resolution or clarification, they can obviously contact. So that's it's just an easy interface to look at. It is Google Maps. It has our Street View guy. As you zoom in, you get a even better look at what's going on. As you zoom in, more and more things start to appear, as you can see. Here we have data from both Hillsborough County. So here's a Hillsborough County example, and it gives, it's permitting information. So it's good from June 17th to July 14th. A lot of times it'll say who's actually doing the road work and so on, but it is about standardizing that. And you can obviously get shared, we can do sharing not only through LiveLink, but also through social media. You'll see FDOT projects. That's a Hillsborough County. Let's see. This is one that I actually created. Let's see if we can find a DOT freeway project here. Yeah, there's an FDOT. What's good here in the Tampa region so far, the data we've taken in our city, county, and state, a lot of it has data attached to it that's linear. and some geospatial data that we can work with. That's not the case everywhere we go. So if you look at some Caltrans data, we can take a look at that and say, well, if you really want to know what's going on in that closure, what information is there for you? And when you pick on it as a user, you only see what information is out there. Like we saw in Florida, we can see information for road users when it's closed, and we saw it for operational teams, really a text description of what that is. Our content management module allows us to go in and create other things on the fly. So if it's a Caltrans project, they may want a link to the Caltrans website or a project website. They may want contact information. If it's a Verizon project or some utility project, they may have information on that. Email alerts, we have feedback mechanisms. All of that is managed through our content management portal. That's not necessary to set all that up, but again, enhancing the data through automated processes is what that content management module is about. Let me jump over to the live link for just a second. I created a quick live link closure just to kind of show you the simplicity of the interface. So there are two interfaces. One is the one you see here, the live link closures, and that comes up when I go to my home. If I have one that I am responsible for, or I have access to, it will show up in the list. Same thing if I have the handheld device, it will show up in the handheld device. What that allows me to do as a permission is to go in and to close the lanes as I see them, or as they've been planned. So I'm out in the field, we start putting cones down, I simply hit close lane. It's going to then close that lane. The data goes out through the ecosystem, out to our GPS partners. It goes back to ATMS, wherever it's programmed to go, and it's done. So that lane is now closed. That lane can be quickly and easily opened just by hitting another open lane. If you're just hitting open lane, if you're in the field, you can also do temporary speed limits and worker presence. So that's a feature that's worked into the handheld device and is being rolled out with the FDOT project. So I want to show you real quick the traffic management module. I created this one already, and I created it literally because I already had some data to bring in. I just linked that to step one, which gave me all of this information. This information was readily available, so I just clicked the box and said link it to this one. And so that takes all the information from here, shows what's applicable in the side. Now, this is only used by the agency. This panel and what we call a traffic management module is not accessible through any other modules or any other activities through either a contractor who has access to things like live link and plan share, or to the general public. So this is managed 100% by the agency. Step two, what we're doing is we're going in and setting up certain things like those lane closures. I just went in and in about 30 seconds said, these are the lanes I want to close. This is the temporary speed limit I want to apply it. So that then is step two. You can apply a whole lot of different types of roadworks. So road closures, detours, heavy vehicle detours, lane closures. I mean, there's about 40 of these things that you can apply. Now, the good thing about it is that we have attributes for each one of those. So when you're in a lane closure, you're able to add lanes and really configure that. If you have something like a full closure, then there are bridge closure or a heavy vehicle or a reduced speed limit. Those attributes are all there and they're quick picks, and you can apply that. So if I wanted to apply a detour to this, I would simply go in and plot the route of the detour, and with picking 2 points, drag that line to where I want the detour, and it's done. It comes back with turn-by-turn directions and a lot more information to share. I'm moving through this pretty quickly because we are on a time limit, so I can answer questions at the end. But again, it's really a simple 3-step process. Import the data specifically, work to enhance that data, and then the third one is to create other documentation to share. So if I had to create something like a public notice, I can create a public notice that takes the data and throws it into a template. All this yellow data is what we've already created or enhanced or pulled in. And so there's no need to recreate the wheel. I can simply come in here and say insert a map. I can insert that map, I can capture it, and then that map becomes part of it. Again, it's all about reusing the data that's already there. I can then add that here, and then I can publish the plan. That's the 3-step process. You can create things from scratch. We can do it from importing a data and linking it to it, but the traffic management module is the key component to creating enhanced data within the platform. The last thing I'll show you is what we call Plan Share. And Plan Share is a process-driven module that allows, I'm in as a submitting user, so either internally submitting folks that need approval for lane closures or any roadworks, or a contractor or a utility company that you've granted access to the system. They can come in and create a new plan just like what I did, except there's a submittal for documentation into step 3. So if they need to submit documents that are pertinent to what your agency needs to make that approval, they can then do that. But at the end of the day, they push that data and then they can see what, through their user interface, what is pending, what's accepted, and what's rejected. The same thing on the other side. If you look at it coming in, what happens when it's submitted is that the approver then gets an email, and then when they pull up their interface, it comes in as a pending. They can accept it, reject it, comment on it. There's chat feature. So it automates the process of the back and forth. We have some case studies from the UK that really show the savings of time and money in interacting in order to do that. It doesn't need to take the place of permitting, but it can definitely enhance the permitting process and integrate into the permitting process today. So I think that was a lot to say in a short period of time. I'm comfortable to open it up to questions about anything we talked about.
Looks like a very valuable tool. Yes.
Quick question. Do you have an example of what it looks like on the user side on Waze or Apple Maps?
I showed an example of that, I think. Hang on. I'll just pull it up on here. Yeah, like this would be an example of Google. So this is our interface that we've been looking at. And then again, it depends on what you're looking at. Waze is different from Google, is different from Apple, and so on and so forth. So depending on what their interface accepts and what they can display, some display alerts as you get near it, along with the actual road closed here and a bit of information. But it really depends on which interface you're looking at as to what's displayed and how it's displayed. I think the most important thing to remember, it is authoritative data coming to them. They treat it as such. They take in a lot of data. We've had a relationship with these folks for quite some time, and it took a while for them to actually auto trust a lot of our data. And so what they're doing with the LiveLink data is auto trusting that now because they know where it's coming from, which gives them the ability to publish it fairly in real time.
I know at Waze, at the city, we use Waze for cities. Depending on what the closure is, we by hand, we enter those closures. And so that's an official opportunity to do a road closure or a directional closure. We have some limitations with that, and it's not real time either, unless you have people that are driving the street. They're going, this is open, but there's a verification process that Waze uses. But we can go in there as a city, our TMC has access to it, and then they'll either put it up or they'll take it down. Like recently, we had to extend one because of some construction work on Highland. So, and when we've seen this, it looks like a great opportunity to coordinate, because in Seminole Heights, we have our flood relief project, while we also have I-275 is under construction, those bridges. So we're coordinating a lot with the closures on MLK, which goes under the interstate, as well as Chelsea and Osborne. And we're going to close Florida. So good opportunity for that.
Yeah, like I said, the data that we see here is already somewhat enhanced. It has some linear geospatial data that we can work with already. I think I already said that's not the case everywhere you go. Like where I'm at in Phoenix, if you look at that, we have all the data from Maricopa County, and it's all point data. They don't have any geospatial data. So as you zoom in, you'll see all these closures and roadworks that are permitted, but nobody is given any information on what exactly is the closure, how long is it really for, if it can be in real time, we can get those closures done and get it out to the public or back into other systems or partnered systems. We've actually, in the UK, have pushed data out to multiple jurisdictions. So if Hillsborough County and Tampa want to share the data into their ATMS systems, we're kind of the repository for it, and then it kicks out the information back to ATMS, ATIS. The public, I should mention this, the public map can also be shared in a frame on your website. And again, we don't really charge for that. It's just a matter of web development on your end to be able to put the public map into your own website.
Any other questions or comments? Nope. Thank you for.
I guess just
Oh,
from the
sorry,
county
Brian.
perspective is you're just doing this within the county, unincorporated county, and then you're going to branch it out to the other cities as I guess a pilot program is just for the county to consider this program.
It's a good question. It would be the entire county, right, Barry?
Yeah, all the data that you have coming from your GIS and permitting systems is displayed here. Everything in the county, and it's constantly synchronizing and updating.
From the county, meaning that the city has to provide the county information.
Yeah, the city would have to provide a data feed to your permitting system of what your closures are, your temporary traffic control.
Yeah, we would just have to get that data and provide it to one network.
So the city, I think,
uploading its
GIS data. Barry, you want to elaborate on that?
On what?
On the type of data, where you're getting it from?
Yeah, I believe, and I'd have to clarify with I think there's multiple feeds that we're getting. Both, I think the city and the county are from GIS feeds, which are fed by some permitting systems. We can take it from either. This was just the quickest, easiest way to do it. We already have an Esri API. So we took that data, and you can see this is the data that's coming in. And Margaret, you can probably confirm this is permitting data that your folks are entering, right?
Yeah, I was actually looking at the card that you pulled up, and I'm like, it looks like building maintenance. Scroll down. I don't know. It's probably an export out of Acela.
Yeah, I think it goes from Acela to, if I'm not mistaken, memory serves me, it goes from Acela over to your GIS and then out to us.
Yeah, we actually are we take the data from Acela and TNI, our group, our technology and innovation group. They're taking the data from Acela and then they process it and then they map it. Unfortunately, full disclosure, our mapping out of Acela, because the limitations of Acela are dots. But anyway, just like Phoenix. So
yeah,
but we're working on it. Steps are steps. We'll see where we go.
Yeah, I mean, for us to get the data in and up and running is days, not weeks or months. We can turn up a region or an agency very quickly just to get the data in so that you can look at it. So if anyone wants to do that, contact me. We'll walk through the process. But usually what we'll do from that standpoint is we'll take the data in. We can all take a look at it, see what it looks like. We can walk through the workflow processes, Brian, like we did, work through those processes, see what modules and what tools that you want to use. And then we're a SaaS-based system. We can turn the system up quickly. We've done what we did at FDOT. We started, I guess, the end of May, early June, and we soft launched the thing within 3 weeks or 4 weeks and had lane closures coming live into our system. And then now we're training all the people that are going to be using it, and that launch, the full launch where it'll go out to the GPS providers and so on, is later in August. So it's a very rapid deployment. We've done it so many times. There's some processes to it that make it very easy for us to turn a system up.
I just also want to point out, like with the county, their systems, they separated like right-of-way permitting and the actual, the work that's going to be done for the utility coordination, that happens in right-of-way permitting. And then their temporary traffic control is separate. So that's an Esri system, right? So that's where the city and the county, we have different animals that we're having to deal with as far as the way we're set up. So theirs was really easy, well, honestly. From my perspective right now, theirs is easier, much easier than ours because ours are tied and we're stuck with points for now. I'm not satisfied with that, so it'll change. Anyone else? Yeah, it's exciting, going to data.
Thanks, Barry.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're just trying to get the information to the travelers so they can make their personal choice and modify their journeys based on what they need and react to any near real-time conditions. So, and then also it offers us the opportunity to plan projects when it comes to construction. So that's really powerful. Thank you, Barry. All right, next up, Megan.
Yeah.
Megan?
Hi. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the Regional Advanced Mobility Element project on I-4 frame. And if Vishaka, you want to slide the advance the slides, I would appreciate it.
I can do that, sure.
Thank you.
I need to. Can you see my screen? Okay. Megan, can you see?
Yes, thank you. And you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, great. So last year this time I gave a presentation about I-4 frame, and at that time just wanted to present the project to you, and at the same time we were going through the design process and we were getting ready for getting these projects led and into construction. So I'll give you a short synopsis of the project. Second slide, please. So like any project, why is the project needed? What are we doing with respect to why it's needed? Where is the project? How does it work with the network that it's being constructed? And when will the project be done? And when will the construction start? So next slide, please. The I-4 frame project meets our vision to promote safety, mobility, and innovation. And basically it's a project to make your trip more reliable and safe. One thing to remember is that throughout the history of what the department projects encompassed was the widening of a lot of our roadways. What we have heard from our stakeholders and our citizens is that they would like to see technology helping us with mobility and reducing congestion and providing alternatives to the drivers when an incident happens on the roadway that they're traveling. And in this scenario, it's I-4. So I-4 Frame is a project that uses technology to reduce congestion and improve mobility and give alternatives to the drivers, as I mentioned before. Next slide, please. And as we all know, I-4 is a vital artery between Tampa and Orlando. Orlando receives 75 million annual visitors, and about 150,000 vehicles travel daily on I-4. I-4 had seen a lot of crashes, and throughout 3 years, from 2016 to 2019, 70 fatal crashes and 6,350 injury crashes. In an average, we see a full directional closure every 11 days in 2018. And as a matter of fact, I have more updated information, but the reality is these are a large number of accidents and injuries. And that's what exactly this project will help in reducing these incidents. Next slide. This is just a heat map. It shows the location of all the incidents. On the left side, you see it's Tampa, and on the right side, it's Orlando. And there are many, many incidents that happens, and that's just a visual presentation of what happens on I-4 as far as congestion and accidents. Next slide, please. And these are some more effective visuals. For instance, on the left side, you know, there was a crash, and yeah, what you see is sheetrocks, which is going to take hours to clean. Then on the top, you see a secondary crash that was resulted from the first crash. And then the bottom is some incident with you know an automobile on that's on fire. So there are a lot of different incidents on I-4, and their extent could be tremendous as far as also impacting the travelers and how long they stay on I-4. So I-4 Frame again is giving alternatives to the drivers when these incidents happen. Next slide. This provides a visual as far as how the regional I-4 Frame encompasses 3 districts, District 7, 1, and 5, and also Turnpike. And it encompasses 4 counties, Hillsborough, Polk, Osceola, and Orange County. And we all know that, for instance, District 1 is the heart of Florida distribution. And what you see in the middle is, in red, is I-4. And I also have defined some of the destinations. You know, we have great universities in these areas. We have 2 major airports. We have, you know, medical facilities that are all part of why it's important to have this project. And it's a regional project, which is much different than many of our other projects as far as the fact that usually the projects are within one district, but this is much different. And it allowed us to work with a lot of partners, and I will give you a little bit synopsis of what we all worked on. So in District 7, it includes 25 miles of I-4, 80 miles of arterial, and 30 miles on State Road 60, and also in Florida Turnpike 3 miles, and THIA Temple Hillsborough Expressway Authority 16 miles. And you can see the same for District 1 and District 5 and the Turnpike as far as the limits of this project. What you see in blue are the primary routes, and the dash blue is the secondary route. So for instance, if there's an incident on I-4 in District 7, many of the alternative routes will include Hillsborough and MLK. And the same thing when incidents happens in District 1 or District 5, the same, the travelers will have alternative routes that gives them, for instance, if you take I-4 to your destination, it would take this many minutes. If you take Hillsborough, the timeline that would take to get to their destination, and the same thing with MLK. Next slide, please. Throughout the process, I4 Frame, we had worked very closely with all of our stakeholders and the local agencies. And we were going to have agreements, for instance, in District 7 with City of Tampa, Hillsborough County, and City of Plant City. The same thing for District 1 and the same for District 5. These agreements define what is the expectation after the project is completed, and what's the expectation from the department, and what's the expectation from the local agency. And those have been going very well. Our legal group has looked at them, and also the legal and the engineering partners in each of those local agencies are reviewing it too. But we want to have the agreements in place, so about 2 years when this project is done, everything is well defined. Next slide, please. As any project, we like to determine the value of our investment. So we're using the 4 universities listed on this slide to do the before and after studies. And at current time, they're gathering a lot of information from the 3 districts and Turnpike. Next slide, please. So how does I4 Frame work? For instance, as far as speed management, it provides information to the drivers that, for instance, prepare to slow down, because the traffic in front of them had slowed down. A lot of roads, Florida is very lucky in a sense that, especially with the department, we get a lot of funding to do roadway work. And we're very unique because we have the trust that, if you promise a project going forward, that project goes forward and gets done within the time limits that we have promised. But then again, there is a second side to that, and there is a lot of construction going on. So we want to make sure that the drivers are aware of the work zone and the maintenance of traffic that's going on. So this would provide that work zone traffic management and the locations to the drivers. For instance, back of queue warning when it's time to stop. Many of you have gone through I-275 going south, before the flyover, those areas we have, the traffic had stopped. So that will provide this information to the drivers, so minimize the secondary crashes. Wrong way driving, it has a wrong way driving component, and this is a 2-pronged. Right now, our wrong way driving devices, what they provide is gives the opportunity to the wrong way driver to make the decision to go and correct themselves. This system that goes with the I4 Frame, it also gives that opportunity for other drivers to know that there's a wrong way driver on the road, and gives them the ability to be able to get out of the first exit. So gives them notices for wrong way drivers. And that's just the basic. For instance, it has a freight management aspect to it, which is broadcast traffic management information to freight vehicles. and it has the predictive analytic feature, which continuously predicts crash risk based on real-time data. Next slide, please. So this is the good news. We had 5 projects. 2 of the projects were goes with in District 7, which was the contract number 1. And that was let in March of 22. The approximate construction cost is about $10.1 million. The second contract includes 3 districts, District 1, District 5, and FTE projects. That project was let yesterday, and we have received the bids, but we have to wait until selection, and that information will be available within the next 2 weeks. As overall, the respective costs that we have from our engineers' estimates is 8.5 for D1, 2.9 for D5, and FTE's portion is a small at $116,000. The time frame for the first contract, the start of construction will be fall of 2022, and the anticipated time is, as far as final acceptance of the project, is 2024. The same, with the second contract, which is winter of 2022 and completion in early 2025. Next slide, please. This one is just a cartoon to me of how everybody, as far as the cars, the roadside units, the onboard units, and the whole I4 frame system can provide as far as communication. For instance, here you see cars communicating with each other through the onboard units, cars communicating with the roadside units that are going to be implemented through the construction of devices on I4 frame. And all of this information will be transmitted to the RTMC, and then the RTMC will provide that information back through the RSUs to the OBUs on the, and also some of the devices that are personal devices that we hear from many vendors to the travelers. Next slide, please. Just a little summary of, for instance, who are our partners on I4 frame that was let in March. The project, the low bid was highway safety devices, and the letting for, as I mentioned, the letting for the other segment, the other contract was yesterday, so we have to wait for that information. The CEI is AE Engineering, and we're excited about that because they were the I4 Ultimate CEI that worked with District 5, and that's exciting for us because a lot of these are new devices, and it is good to have a contractor and a CEI that has experience before. So we're very happy about the selection of the CEI. And the EOR is Metric Engineering. Next slide. So what have we been working on since March? Since March, we have been having meetings with the contractor and the CEI. It's always important to be very clear about how the submittal for the shop drawing and the process for the shop drawing submittals are. So we have been putting that schedule together. Then coordination was held with HSD, AE, and Metric Engineering to discuss coordination that will be required between HSD and Metric since they're the system development and system integration firm, and they need to work very closely with the contractor. The pre-construction meeting is going to be in September, and then one of the reasons is some of the devices and some of the, for instance, fiber or any other item that has a lead time as far as obtaining it. That's what the contractor is working on, because right now, as you know, the lead time for procurement of some devices take a few months. Shop drawings have started being submitted, and it's being reviewed. Next slide, please. So one of the major devices that are being deployed is the roadside units. The roadside units, the department had put an invitation to bid for the RSUs, and these RSUs are the contractor who had the low bid was Iteris. Iteris, again, they had worked very closely with District 5, so we got assistance from District 5 to test 10 of the RSUs, because as total District 7 and State Road 60 portion has 272 of the RSUs from the total 556 for the full the 5 projects. And what did the District 5 test these RSUs for? The reason why we wanted to test it to ensure functionality and compatibility, and to minimize any issues with configuration and integration. So the testing included configuration for SPAT, MAP, TIMS, BSM, CSCMS, and SRM. And so, for instance, you know, the signal phasing and timing, the map ID was used to match lanes ID inside the controllers. The map geometry intersection testing included creating a map using DOT map tool, and we use the Denso OBUs. For instance, for the TIM, which is a traveler information, the USDOT tool was used to configure TIM and was stored inside the RSU. And that was the extent of what they tested for us. So after they tested the first 10, we have ordered the next 180 units of RSU to be delivered. And we would like to get these units because obviously the contractor will be needing them, you know, starting September. Next slide, please. The next 2 items that we are putting together an invitation to bid is the IVP hub, which is the integrated vehicle to infrastructure prototype, and the LiDAR that's needed. There are 3 IVP and 6 LiDAR units. LiDAR, you know, for each direction is 1 LiDAR is needed. So how does this system work together? The LiDAR system provides 3D topo information in real time. That information is sent to IVP, which processes the information and then determines, okay, you know, what I see from the LiDAR is it a ped, is it a bike? And then that information is sent to the RTMC to be distributed back to the travelers. As far as you saw on the cartoon, you know, there was you know, the pedestrian was crossing, and then you know, the driver could see that, you know, the location of the pedestrian. Next slide, please. So this is in total, we have 556 RSUs, 272 in District 7, and 284 in District 1, 5, and Turnpike. And as I mentioned, we're putting together the ITB for the IVP and the LiDAR, and we're hoping to get that out late July, early August. Right now, the specifications has been written and it's under review by District 5, so that we gain from their previous knowledge and we don't, you know, duplicate efforts. And that is my presentation for today.
Thank you, Megan. Yeah, that was, it's good to see the progress that's been made over the last couple of years, for sure. And getting so close, testing the equipment and then getting towards deployment. You said in September or October, they're going to, the contract.
September for the first contract.
Excellent. What kind of questions do we have? Anyone have any questions? Ooh, quiet group. It's tough to go last after 2 hours. Thank you, Megan. You'll be back, I'm sure.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Megan.
Okay, as we draw to a close, just had a couple comments. Just last week, I think it was, that DOT released electric vehicle infrastructure deployment plan. I don't know if everyone received that or was aware of that, so that is of interest. And I have heard that being in context of like disaster and evacuations, you know, if you're in your Tesla, where are you gonna feel, you know, stop and recharge. Did have another question. What are some of the other subjects you guys are interested in? If you don't know off the top of your head in the last few minutes, if you can think of anything, you know, we strategize and and we ask around what's going on. But if you have something unique you'd like to present on, or you know someone that you've talked to recently is of interest in the technology world. Crickets.
I'm going to share in the chat link to the EV plan.
She's going to put the EV plan in the chat. I don't know if everyone heard her. Okay. Okay. We had no old business, no new business, so that brings us to adjournment. The meeting's ended. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shotgun, you know what?